channel. It's been a little while. Yeah, I was, first my family came to visit, and then I was in Norway. So I didn't have any time to make videos, but now I'm back. And my semester begins very soon. So I'll be more busy again, but I hope to keep making videos anyways. Hopefully eventually a philosophy one again, but those take a long time to prepare, and I want to prioritize, sorry for the plane that'll be gone soon. But I want to prioritize making videos over making, like, the most intensive ones, because I don't know, I don't want to abandon the channel for 2 years again, because, yeah, I feel like I don't know, my videos aren't that great now, but I feel like if I keep the tempo up and keep making things, then they'll get better, and then I'll also have more energy to do more complicated things. Who knows? Anyways, today, one of the things my dad brought with him, was a bunch of books from home, which I didn't bring because they were bulky. But now that I think I'm staying in Germany/Europe, semi-permanently at least, I want them, especially if I decide to go to grad school here, because a lot of them are philosophy books, because I tend to read, I read a lot of fiction too, but the fiction I tend to read in an ebook format, whereas philosophy, I want to mark up the book, and that's a lot easier with a real book. So yeah, anyways, I like book ASMR. You can see right here that my bookshelf is all messed up because I took all the books from it. Now there's just a board game right there, a piece of hardware, it's called a Wi-Fi pineapple, a few things for my job, some magic cards, change, and I think a bottle of ink, yeah. So, but my books are all right next to me over here, and let's just get into it because I have quite a few of them. So, yeah, the first and definitely physically largest pile, I think also I have the most books, would be philosophy books. And basically I just told my dad to bring any book. We talked and I was like, yes, bring that one. No, don't bring that one. So I chose all the books that I thought I might use in my day-to-day life and also in grad school, when I go to grad school. So the first one, I took a course on this book last semester, and I think that, yeah, I think this is going to be mirrored text, but, you can read it anyways. So this is Tom Reagan's The Case for Animal Rights, and it's it's a rights-based perspective on animal ethics from Tom Reagan, who was a pretty contemporary philosopher, although he died recently. And next to Peter Singer's Animal Liberation, it's the most well-known book on animal rights. I didn't find it that great. I'm really into animal rights, but I don't know, I thought some of his argumentation and where he starts from epistemically is weird. I can talk more. I don't know. But I read the whole book because the entire seminar was about the book, and it was interesting because I was at a German university and I'm an American. It was a class in German about this American book, and whenever the professor wanted to read something out loud, he had a very thick German accent in English, but he would always ask me to read things in English because he knew I was American. So, that's the whole story about that. But yeah, solid book. Not my cup of tea. What is my cup of tea? Animal rights wise, though, and also just philosophy wise, is Christine Korsgaard. This is her book on animal rights called Fellow Creatures. subtitle Our Obligations to the Other Animals. I think this book is really, really good and also quite approachable. I think even if you aren't really into philosophy, it's not that big, and it's broken up into like sort of bite-sized sections. So as you can see, it's all like numbered. Let me see. Yeah, so there's like 7.2. I'm sorry, this is mirrored. 7.2 reciprocity arguments, and then it's 7.2.1, 7.2.2, and they're mostly like a page long. So it's not like there are some philosophy books where you need to maintain focus for like 10 minutes to get through a thought. But Christine Korsgaard writes very clearly and fairly succinctly, but also she's incredibly smart. She recently retired. She was a professor at Harvard, but I think she's my favorite philosopher. She's a Kantian. She is more famous for her other books, just generally on Kantian philosophy. But this is her most recent book from 2018, and it is really good. I would recommend it. I definitely want to make some videos on it eventually, but before I do that, I need to explain Kantian ethics generally, I think. Or else you wouldn't have the context, I suppose. But yeah, wonderful book. 10 out of 10. Honestly, my favorite philosophy book. Would recommend. Moving on. We have a classic. Aristotle, the Nicomachean Ethics. Took a research seminar on Greek. Oh gosh, what was it called? I think it was just called Greek Ethics. There was a more complicated name. That was last year. And one of the things we read was Aristotle. Yep, Aristotle's not as boring as people say he is. Ancient philosophy is not my thing, but Aristotle he gets a bad rep for being boring. I don't think he's actually that boring. But I don't know. It's still ancient philosophy, so it's still kind of boring in my opinion. I know a lot of people love it though, but not as boring as I expected. Solid book. Important in the history of philosophy. Next, we have Kant's The Groundwork of the Metaphysics of Moral. This is Kant wrote basically 2 books on morals. This one's really thin, and this one he intended as like the popular release, which sort of explains the baseline, and then he wrote a really long book. I forget its name. I read part of that one, but I've read this one multiple times, and this one is actually, it looks like it's this long, but actually this much is the foreword written by, guess who? Christine Korsgaard. And then the actual work itself is pretty small, but extremely dense. And I've been meaning to make a video on this book for a long time, but the argumentation is extremely dense, and I would really need to organize my thoughts before I could really explain it. But it's an important book. That's why I brought it. I'm definitely going to be reading it again, especially if I make the video. So next are 2 books that I bound myself. This first one, it's got like a wave pattern. I don't know if you can see it, yeah. It was kind of sloppily bound. I think it was my first actual bound, like, book. And, this is another Christine Korsgaard book. It's called The Sources of Normativity. And this, I think, Korsgaard's most well-known book. As you can see, I've read it, I think, twice. I read Fellow Creatures 3 times. I want to reread this one again, because I need to, like, write a paper on it or something so that I love this YouTube channel, because when you actively synthesize something and teach it, or need to make an argument about it, you remember it so much better and understand it so much better. So that was a real tool for me with those philosophy videos, because writing a whole script and explaining it to someone else really helped my own understanding. But yeah, this is her book on her general theory of Kantian ethics, and it's collected from a series of lectures she gave. Because of that, it's not too formally written. It is formally written, but it's also not like extremely academic. Okay, it is also that, but it's not impossible to comprehend. As you can see, it's also not that thick again. Would recommend, but definitely, unlike Fellow Creatures, I think it would be significantly less accessible to a non-philosopher person, because she references so many people in this book, and if you don't have the context, then some of it might not make sense. But that's not to discourage anybody who's curious. It's still a good book. You could probably do it even if you don't have that much background. Yeah. And then here's my second self-bound book. This one is Wittgenstein's Philosophische Untersuchungen, or, because it's a bilingual version, Philosophical Investigations. And I found this this is probably my best bound book. I haven't found that many. It takes time, and I don't have any of the materials with me here in Germany. But, yeah, I found this when I was still not very good with German. As you can see, there's, I was okay at German, but I'm not as good as I am now. And as you can see, there's German on one side, English on the other. I used this for my Wittgenstein seminar. Wittgenstein's really cool. Big fan. Only of this book, though. The Tractatus is not my cup of tea, and I think I agree with Wittgenstein's own critiques of himself in this one. But yeah, good book. And reading it in German was cool. Wittgenstein does not use that many big words, so reading him in German was not too bad, although it was definitely harder. So yeah. Moving on, we've got three thick boys. So first is Derek Parfit's On What Matters, Volume 1. And this is Derek Parfit. He's a really well-known contemporary philosopher. And his most famous book is called Reasons and Persons, I think. Yeah. And it basically raised a bunch of important philosophical questions that sort of defined contemporary discourse on a lot of things. This is a lesser-known book. It says, this book is about reasons, value, and morality. There are summaries near the start of both volumes. Each volume can be bought and read on its own book. But yeah, I wanted to read this because Parfit kind of comes to... He doesn't self-characterize this, but I've heard it's basically utilitarian conclusions. He views himself as uniting Kant and utilitarians and stuff. But he's famous for being extremely smart and like the best contemporary philosopher, and like basically he's just really famous in philosophy academia. He's dead now though, but he's definitely one of the most important philosophers of our time. And I was like, okay, well, I really like Korsgaard, and I'm becoming more of a Kantian, so I might as well give the best arguments of the other side a chance. And I read, back when I started this philosophy channel, I read this much. But then I haven't read any more since. But it's still on my reading list, and it is a thick book. And as you can see, Volume 2. Oh shit, the book's just fell. Sorry for the noise. As you can see, Volume 2 is even thicker. So this is like basically not even a book. It's as thick as a dictionary, Jesus Christ. I like the pictures though. Quite aesthetic and quite big. I need to read those. Anyways, yeah. The books fell, but they fell in a way that I don't think is damaging them, so I'm just gonna leave them until I'm done. Next is another thick book, also for my Greek ethics class. Plato, The Complete Works. I like Aristotle more than Plato, I think, but Plato's really cool too, and Plato writes in, Plato writes in dialogues, which makes things more digestible sometimes. So here are all of Plato's works, and I read a bunch of them. I don't think I read all of them. I definitely didn't read all of them. I don't know why I'm saying I don't think, but I read a bunch of them in that research seminar on Greek ethics. And yeah, I figured Plato's super important. If I ever go to grad school, I'll need to read Plato again, so why not bring The Complete Works with me? Okay. I apologize if the philosophy section was boring, but now we're done with it. And we're going to go on to the shorter section of non-philosophy books. Sorry about my stomach. Yeah, non-philosophy books. I don't have as many of them because, as I said earlier, I mostly read ebooks for fun. So we've got two separate sections here. We've got first the foreign language for fun books, and then second, like foreign language textbooks. So first is Jonas by Jens Bjørneboe, and this is a pretty famous Norwegian bokmål book. I'm like 5 pages into it. Reading in Norwegian is still pretty slow for me, but it's my friend's favorite book, and the friend gave it to me as well. So I'm going to read it, and it seems pretty well written in the 5 pages so far. Like it's I don't know, it's written in a believable sort of, I don't know. I don't want to say too much about a book that I've only read 5 pages about. That's stupid. But it's from 1955, and it's written by a pretty famous author, and it's my friend's favorite book, so it's probably really good. So yeah. And then next we have a book, and it's also about like a little child. Yeah. Next we have another Norwegian book, but this one is, so the other one was in bokmål. This is in nynorsk. If you don't know, you probably don't know if you don't speak Norwegian, but Norwegian has 2 official written forms of the language. One of them is more like Danish, and one of them is based on a bunch of Norwegian accents, or sorry, dialects. And the reason, basically, I don't want to get too long into it because I'll go on a rant, but it's super interesting. Not many languages have 2 official written forms. So yeah, this one, it's a lot more beat up. It was also given to me by my friend. I know nothing about this book though, but it's called Innsirkling by Carl Frode Diller. I might try and read the nynorsk just for fun. Although my accent's gonna be terrible because I always have a terrible accent when I'm switching from English. David husker ikke hvem han en avisannonse oppfordrer nære og kjente til å skrive brev til han for å gi han minner tilbake. Ungdomsvevnen Jon, en musiker i ferd med å miste fotfestet. Stefaren Arvid, en prest som venter på å dø, og ungdomskjæresten Silje, ei snart middelaldrende kvinne som kanskje er på vei bort interesting though. This one's from 2007, so it's a more modern, contemporary book. It's not from the 50s, but it's in Ninoshka, and I'm taking an Ninoshka course this semester, so maybe I'll try and give it a read after I'm done with Jonas. So yeah, that's that. Next we have two German books, although one of them is actually an Canadian book, translation into German. So the first one, this was given to me by a German friend, different from the Norwegian friend. And this one's like pretty well known, I think. Die Känguru Chroniken. I'm like halfway through it. It's a book about a artist who, a socialist kangaroo moves in with him. And it's like a sort of young adult comedy. And it's basically just a bunch of jokes, and the chapters are really short. And it's funny enough. I think I would have liked it more if I read it when I was a bit younger. But my friend said, oh, you need to read this because all of the German youths, they do be joking with references to this book. And I had heard about this book many times before. So it's not very hard to read. Very short chapters. Pretty funny. I don't know, kind of quirky. It feels a little bit like, basically I should have read this earlier, and I should have read this when it was released, because now some of the things are like a little bit dated. Yeah, because it's from 2019. But yeah, anyways, fine book. I'm going to finish reading it. I'm enjoying it so far. Next we have, this is the Canadian book, or at least I think the author's Canadian, but this was a German translation. I found it randomly in a thrift store for €1, and I was like, okay, I've heard of this book, so maybe I'll read it in German. And it's by Naomi Klein. It's called No Logo. Der Kampf der Globalplayers Marktmacht. Okay. Ein Spiel mit vielen Verlierern und wenigen Gewinnern. So it's a sort of, Naomi Klein's like a socialist lady, and it's about globalism and capitalism. I read like 20 pages in it, and I was gonna read more, and then I kind of just sputtered out because I tend to read fiction. But it's Der Klassiker der Globalisierungskritik, which is the classic of globalization critique of globalization. So yeah, maybe I'll give it a read. I would like to. I just don't know. I don't know if I trust myself to actually do it. But yeah, it's a pretty influential book, I think. But it was also published in the 2000s, I think, and I wonder how relevant it still is today. Although it's not like globalism has changed that much. Although I think political perspectives on it definitely have. Especially with the war and stuff. Globalism not looking so hot today. Or at least not as perfect. Anyways, No Logo. Okay. Now we have the first of the language textbooks. Oh, this one. I don't know if you can really. This one I partially bound, and then So this is the last stage of binding a book before you put a cover on it. So as you can see, when you open a hardcover book, this side would be attached to the hardcover, and this side would be the cover page. And then here the book actually will begin. This is Tokibona. Tokibona is a constructed language by a Canadian, Sonia Lang. And the language only has 120 words. And her idea was this, and she never gave the one I gave her back. But, maybe she'll learn it on her own sometime. If so, good luck to her. But yeah, cool little thing. I really want to learn it at some point with somebody. It would be really cool to, be able to speak it. I don't know. It's just really, I like learning languages, and it would be cool to learn this one because it's so weird. Next we have Al-Kitab fi Ta'alim Al-Arabiya, which is the Arabic textbook that was used in my college in the US. This is the second one in the series, and we didn't get super far into it, but I still have it because I'm going to keep learning Arabic at some point. That's what I tell myself. I won't let myself be defeated by the hard language of Arabic. I'll do it eventually. But yes, I have this. I would rate it pretty highly, although it's definitely it's mainly modern standard Arabic. There's a little bit of Egyptian dialect. And it's definitely, I don't know, it's funny. In the first chapter of the first book, you learn how to say, "Are you with the United Nations?" And it's okay, you can see who is funding the development of Arabic textbooks. And it's the military, at least in the US context. Or international relations people. But it's not this is not a military book, although you learn how to say United Nations and Army and stuff like that pretty early. But it gives you a lot of it's actually a really good book, and it gives you a lot of readings into culture and stuff, and it really goes all in on the only Arabic thing. You are reading whole ass pages of Arabic really early on, and it's super confusing. But I think if you put yourself and apply yourself to it, then it's super rewarding. And I understand why my professor chose this book, or this book series rather. But yeah, it's good. So that's that. And then the next book is Shelfi Mafi, and this is a book on Levantine Arabic that I did one chapter of last summer before I decided that I didn't have enough bandwidth to do Arabic in my free time alongside my job and all the other things I was doing. But this is written by a professor, I think, at one of the US Army colleges. I forget. And it's on the Levantine dialect of Arabic. If you don't know, there's a formal and an informal Arabic, and the formal Arabic has remained the same, or basically the same, since the Quran. And that's modern standard Arabic. It was standardized and modernized a while ago, but it's still very similar to Quranic Arabic, because Quranic Arabic is considered by Muslims to be the perfect Arabic, because it's the language that God chose to talk to the Prophet in. So that has led to Arabic having an astounding level of linguistic consistency, whereas other languages change a lot over time. So standard Arabic has remained the same for 1,600 years, which is insane and awesome. Whereas dialects, which are spoken, have changed over that time. So it's basically almost a different language with very similar grammar and vocabulary. But I don't really understand dialects because I've only really learned modern standard Arabic. And this is a textbook to teach intermediate was Levantine Arabic instead of Egyptian. But also because I'm in Germany and there are a lot of Syrians here. So I figured it kind of made sense. If I'm going to be living where a lot of people speak the language, why not learn their dialect? So yeah, that's that. I really hope to continue with this. As I said, with the other Arabic book. It'd be really cool. And next we have a German book, Grammatik Aktiv. This is a B2 to C1 grammar book for Arabic, and that's like B2 and C1 are like high level. And I used this a few years back when I was learning German, and then I revisited it like a few months ago when I was studying for the C1 exam. And it's what it is. It's a German grammar book. Very thorough, very clear. I would recommend it, I suppose. Lots of grammar, lots of good explanations of grammar, lots of practice. What are they called? Exercises. Yeah. Good book. Helped me pass my C1 exam. Yeah. So yeah, that's all the books I have with me here that aren't on my e-reader. Although I read a lot on my e-reader. I could talk about the fiction I read at some point, but it wouldn't be as tactile with the sounds of